Good evening and thank you for joining us for KREM 2 News at 5 tonight. I'm Mark Hanrahan.
It's good to have you here. I'm Whitney Ward. We begin tonight with breaking news. Right now, level 2 evacuations are in effect, meaning be prepared to leave. This is in the area of 700 Butte Road and Moran Creek Road.
Crews are responding to a fire burning 8 miles south of Colville near Arden. It's currently burned more than 12 acres and is 0% contained at this hour. For more information right now, just head to the Stevens County Emergency Management's Facebook page or our website, which of course is KREM.com.
In other top stories, disaster recovery teams are clearing out the Moscow home where 4 University of Idaho students were killed last year.
But KREM 2 News has learned some of the families of the 4 homicide victims are not happy about the university's plan to tear down the house on King Road.
Shannon Mouty spent the day in Moscow and spoke with the attorney for one of those families about why this may hurt more than heal.
KREM 2 News first told you back in February the owner of this house gave it to the University of Idaho so it could be torn down. The university has now started that process against the wishes of some of the victims' families. We're used to relative quiet at the home on King Road. But Thursday, a radio played behind the boarded up walls as a disaster crew packs up the items left behind. University of Idaho students Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogan, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle were killed in the house in November 2022.
They anticipate it will take them a couple of weeks to get all the personal items out.
Jody Walker with the University of Idaho says the prosecution and defense for the man accused of the murders agreed to release the house to the university.
To get that to demolish before school starts, yes.
Fall classes begin August 21st. The suspect in the murder case is expected to go to trial in October.
It's the largest piece of evidence in the entire case.
That's why Shannon Gray, attorney for the Gonzalez family, says his clients are upset a critical piece of the puzzle may be lost.
The families feel like it should be left there until the trial is over.
There's fear, he says, it could still hold necessary evidence or help jurors visualize the case better than photos or 3D models.
If there's any evidence that's brought up in trial that, has to do with vantage points or how you can hear something or how you can see something or entry points or exit points.
In a letter obtained by KREM 2, an attorney for the university acknowledged the Gonzalez's, Mogans, and Kernodles don't want the house torn down before the case is resolved. But attorney Kent Nelson adds the university needs a legal reason before considering delaying demolition. Does the university have a response to the family's concerns?
The university's been in contact with the families since we took over the ownership of the house in the spring.
The university says leveling the house will be healing for students, the Moscow community, and the victims' loved ones.
It's not healing for the families. And they're the ones that had their children murdered, okay? I'm not sure how the university could take their wishes over those of the victims' families.
Right now, Gray says he's not considering taking legal action to stop the demolition. Walker tells me a demolition date will be set later, but the house on King Road is expected to come down before the semester starts. In Moscow, Shannon Mouty, KREM 2 News.
This morning, the U.S. Supreme Court issued its ruling on affirmative action after students challenged admission policies that take race into consideration. In a 6-3 ruling, the court struck down affirmative action in college admissions, overturning more than 40 years of legal precedent. The news has sent shockwaves across the nation, and just hours ago, President Joe Biden weighed in on the landmark decision.
I know today's court decision is a severe disappointment to so many people, including me, but we cannot let the decision be a permanent setback for the country.
Today's decision overturns decades of legal precedent, but activists who argued the university's affirmative action policies discriminated against white and Asian American applicants hailed the ruling as a victory.
Ending racial preferences in college admissions is an outcome that the vast majority of all Americans of all races will celebrate.
Both UNC and Harvard said they will comply with the court's ruling, but they also said they're committed to continuing to bring together students with different life experiences.
We want to dig deeper into what impacts of today's Supreme Court decision will have on our region. But to understand the future, we also have to understand the past.
KREM 2's Janelle Finch is in the studio now with more on the history of affirmative action in the Inland Northwest. Janelle?
Banning affirmative action isn't a new idea in Washington or Idaho, but it has had a back and forth history here in the Evergreen State. So today I'm breaking down the last 25 years of affirmative action and what experts say the effects of banning it nationwide could look like. Washington state voters banned affirmative action in 1998 with a 58% majority. That was Initiative 200. For over 2 decades, public institutions and workplaces couldn't give special consideration or treatment based on race or gender. In 2022, Governor Jay Inslee signed an executive order in response to what he believed was overly restrictive guidance.
Today, too many Washingtonians face systemic barriers, discrimination, and inequities that are persistent and prevent them from flourishing and achieving their full potential.
That executive order allowed state agencies to document and act on discrimination and disparities in their institutions, while also being in compliance with the 1998 initiative. The vice president of research at the Washington Policy Center says the effectiveness of this executive order could change with Thursday's Supreme Court ruling.
Washington State is going to have to go back and review all their policies to make sure that they are in alignment with what the Supreme Court ruled.
University presidents at Eastern Washington colleges responded to the Supreme Court decision. EWU President Sherry McMahon told KREM 2 this decision should not impact the admissions process at EWU. WSU President Kirk Schultz said in part, "While we will review the court's ruling and abide by its decision, it's our duty and our pledge to continue to address the systemic discrimination and biases that hinder students of color."
What will test whether we have more fairness and justice in our higher education admission system is what do students actually experience? If they feel they're being treated fairly.
Idaho banned affirmative action back in 2020. Still on the University of Idaho's website, there are compliance guidelines for university employees. The Equal Employment Opportunity and Affirmative Action webpage says, quote, "Our work is guided by compliance with the university's non-discrimination policies and by federal and state regulations related to equal opportunity and affirmative action." A university representative could not be reached for further comment. Governor Jay Inslee released a statement in response to the Supreme Court decision. He says in part, quote, "These Republican-appointed judges have again shown their disdain for principles of American law. They've demonstrated they're blind to our long history of racism that contributes to barriers ethnic minorities still face today," end quote. In the studio, Janelle Finch, KREM 2 News.
All right, Janelle, thank you very much. Taking a break from the headlines to talk weather with Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Legoo.
Jeremy, as the temperatures are climbing back into the 90s now, what can we expect for the 4th of July?
Well, it's going to be hot right through the 4th of July, even despite a slight cool down early next week. Those temperatures, well, 90s is just from here on out. That's the way it's going to be. 87 is where we currently sit, and you're hard-pressed to find a cloud in the sky. And after days of that, we eventually dry out. By Saturday, we're talking increased fire danger across the region, and for that reason, we have fire weather watches in effect for much of central Washington and central Oregon. That is for low relative humidity, some extreme heat, and wind that picks up. Under those conditions, it is very likely any little spark turns into a fire, and it's very likely those fires grow rapidly, so we need to be careful because there is not a chance of lightning over the course of the next few days. Any fire that starts basically in our current weather pattern is going to be human caused, so it is all up to us. We talked about this back in May, but yep, we're there. 92 degrees tomorrow, 90 on Saturday, 87 on Sunday. It's also that time of year where you just don't leave anything in the car because it's that kind of dangerous.